Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
Seasonal concert. And this year they're doing this Taylor Swift tribute act.
Nice.
And the girl looks like her.
Okay, cool.
She pulls it off. And we manage their social media, and we're promoting this concert. And I checked the comments just to make sure that it's active and whatever. And I saw the funniest comment. Somebody wrote, "This is like when you get your package from Temu." But this isn't a Chinese shipping podcast. It's Cinema Chop Shop.
Yes, it is.
It's a movie podcast where we talk about films and things that interest us in the movie world. I'm your host, Shawn. I'm joined today by Todd.
Howdy.
And Travisito.
What's up, guys?
Unfortunately, Joey could not be with us today, nor could Lee. Lee was a last-minute cancellation, so it's going to be a slim pickings. You're stuck with us.
Finally, the Slim Pickens episode
yes,
of Cinema Chop
yes.
Shop.
I'm sick, so if I sound like crap, I apologize. I'll do my best to edit out coughs and whatnot, but it is the pollen season here in South Carolina, so just bear with us as we struggle through. Don't know why we decided to pick up on this episode. We just last minute, as we finished up the Gene Hackman episode, we were talking about what we might want to do. I threw out the idea of doing a William Friedkin episode, and then you guys picked up on Sorcerer of William Friedkin film, and then I think it was you, Todd, that said, why don't we do Wages of Fear as well?
Right.
Since
Now,
they're both...
had you seen the previous film
Wait,
already?
Wages of Fear, yes.
You had seen both of them, okay.
Love that movie. But Sorcerer, though, is one that I really had only first heard of within the last couple of years because it just kind of fell off the face of the earth after its release, which we'll can talk about
has
later.
had a little bit of a resurgence.
It's
Right.
really picked up steam on the internet. If you follow a lot of film directors and like movie YouTubers and that kind of thing, chief among them, Quentin Tarantino, he considers Sorcerer to be one of the greatest films ever made.
Yep.
And he says, who gives a shit what it did in the box office?
Right.
I think it's a great movie.
Yep.
We'll go ahead and break the seal on that one. Sorcerer has the distinction of being the film that was released the same week as Star Wars in 1977.
Right.
So, given the choice, the most sizzling hot sci-fi fantasy space opera that has lines around the block to go see, or an existential crisis film set in South America.
And it was just bad timing. Like, it would have been bad timing no matter what the movie was going up against Star Wars, but it was bad timing in his trajectory as in terms of his career, because and I'm sure we'll talk about, it was supposed to be a small budget placeholder before his next big movie, his follow-up to the success of The Exorcist.
Yeah. Yep.
He wanted to make a movie called The Devil's Triangle, which was going to be about the Bermuda Triangle, which I would fucking love to see. And he was going to make this for like $2 million. And then somehow it ballooned into the $22 million thing.
Yeah.
The only reason he didn't make The Devil's Triangle was because Spielberg made Close Encounters, which supposedly there's too many elements similar in those two scripts. So that a perfect storm of bad luck.
Yep. And a lot of people point to that as sort of a metaphorical, like the death of New Hollywood and the birth of the 80s escapist cinema that tended to dominate that era. And one reason that there were, it wasn't just that film Sorcerer, but there were a couple other big budget auteur style films that were big flops, lost money, and so the studios started taking back the control.
Yeah, Sorcerer.
You see, you give these directors an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah, I mean, Sorcerer falls into the same pile as Apocalypse Now when it comes to the scope and scale of these set pieces and making sure things happen authentically. Also, like Aguirre, The Wrath of God, it's kind of has that feel to it.
You mean Aguilar?
Yeah, that one. That's, if you want to say it that way, sure.
Yeah.
And what was the other movie that he made where they were trying to get the ship over the mountain?
You talking about Werner Herzog?
Yeah, the Herzog movie
with Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
Can't remember the name of it.
But that
I've
film
Wrath
is
of God is fantastic.
Yeah. So this movie was ambitious, and we're kind of putting the cart before the horse by talking about Sorcerer, but it is probably the one that's kind of got the most buzz right now in terms of people talking about it.
Right.
Yep.
But of course, the original was Wages of Fear, both of which are based on the book.
Yep.
The Wages of Fear. I'm not going to say the French.
24 years apart.
Yeah.
In terms of their production, but it was also another movie in like '58. They made another adaptation, and then it was also an episode of MacGyver. They used the same premise as an episode of MacGyver.
A very special MacGyver.
And just like last year, there was a Netflix movie based on this as well.
Well, there are elements.
Sorcerer does have a MacGyver-esque scene.
Yeah.
When they blow the tree up.
There is some connection as well to Sorcerer with the film The Keep from 1983.
Yep.
You've got a lot.
I never think of that, but
they're trying to move those nuclear weapons or whatever, and there are some scenes that are very derivative of Sorcerer. So yeah, this has some staying power, I guess, when it comes to some of the suspense elements that make these two movies so effective.
Yep.
All right,
The premise.
let's dive right in.
Right.
Because the premise is basically the same for both movies. There's
Right.
with minor differences.
Yep.
Right. So we have The Wages of Fear from 1953, directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot,
Yes.
starring Charles Vamel. Can I get my glasses? I can't read.
Clouseau, of course, the
Inspector.
the
Yes,
brother
yes.
of the inspector.
The great inspector. I think it's Varnell. Charles Varnell, Vera Clouzot, his wife,
She was 40 years old in this movie, by the way.
Yves Montand, Peter Van Eyck,
Van Eyck,
and William Tubbs and Folko Lully.
William Tubbs.
So, in a squalid South American oil town, 4 desperate men sign on for a suicide mission to drive trucks loaded with nitroglycerin over a treacherous mountain route. As they ferry their explosive cargo to a faraway oil fire, each bump and jolt test their courage, their friendship, and their nerves. The result is one of the greatest thrillers ever committed to celluloid, a white-knuckle ride from France's legendary master of suspense, Henri-Georges Clouzot.
White Knuckle is right, man. You can feel their hands on the steering wheel of these trucks.
Yeah, I decided to go with the Criterion synopses for both of these today instead of going the Google route.
I get nervous and drive worse just when my wife's in the car. Can you imagine the pressure of driving nitroglycerin over these makeshift roads out in the boondocks?
Yes. And rotted bridges, as we may discuss in a bit.
Yeah. Do we want to just go ahead and talk about both of the setups and then kind of get into...
Because they're a little bit different.
They are slightly different, and then we can talk about the compare and contrast between the two and see what works and which... Because I think that...
Sorcerer has the prologues or the
Yeah.
vignettes.
Yeah, and we'll get into that, because I think the character development... Yeah,
Wages of Fear just jumps right into the...
All right, so the other film we'll be talking about, of course, is the aforementioned Sorcerer from 1977, directed by William Friedkin, starring Roy Scheider, Francisco Rabal, Bruno Kremer, and Amadou. And there were other people in the film, of course, but I'm focusing on the 4 principals. A hallucinatory journey into the heart of darkness. William Friedkin's pulse-pounding reimagining of the suspense classic The Wages of Fear was dismissed upon its release, only to be recognized decades later as one of the bolder auteur statements of the New Hollywood.
A boulder.
Hey. In a remote Latin American village, 4 desperate fugitives, a New Jersey gangster, a Mexican assassin, an unscrupulous Parisian businessman, and an Arab terrorist take on a seemingly doomed mission, transporting 2 trucks full of highly explosive nitroglycerin through the treacherous jungle. Aided by Tangerine Dream's otherworldly synth score, Friedkin turns each bump in the road into a tour de force of cold sweat tension, conjuring a hauntingly nihilistic vision of a world ruled by chance and fate.
Speaking of Tangerine Dream, they didn't. All they had to work from when they composed the score was the script. The movie was still being shot when they sent the tapes, because they provided the studio and William Friedkin, who had seen Tangerine Dream years before in Germany. sent them a script and said, "Could you score this?" And he wasn't even done filming the movie when they sent back the score they had composed based on the script.
Interesting. That's not the way it's usually done.
Yep. And of course, as soon as I heard their score kick in, I was thinking, "Are we watching a Dario Argento movie? What is going on here?"
Yeah.
But I love their score for this. It's really.
All right, so let's talk about the first one, Todd. You said we're thrown directly into it. There's very little setup. You just have all of these, not even really ne'er-do-well men, but
no, they're not even supposed. They're supposed to be everymen.
Yeah, they're out of work. They don't do anything. They're kind of loitering at this cafe.
Yeah. Yep. And the owner calls them tramps
because
still takes their money when they do occasionally order. There's no work except for the oil company in town. And it's the Southern Oil Company, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The SOL, shit out of luck.
Well, I'll talk about, and this was something that I noticed because I'd seen the movie before, but that logo becomes very important. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or not, but yes, the plot though, much crisper and just straightforward than we see in Sorcerer. We don't get a lot of backstory of these guys, as you said, Travis. I think that's a good way to put it. They're sort of everymen.
We're introduced to the female character in this film a little earlier, and she plays a little bit bigger part than she does in Sorcerer. The main character out of the four kind of has a shine to her, but
kind of.
But she is the property of the shop owner.
So that's kind of fucked up, that situation. Like, she's cleaning the floors in a very low-cut blouse, I might add.
Yes.
And he's flirting with her, and she's very receptive to any sort of... In fact, she's kind of throwing it at him. And then the owner, who's very suspicious of her anyway, says, "Don't worry, I don't want to hurt her. I only want to do her good," and then sends her upstairs, where he goes up there and joins her and spits a piece of apple and draws the blinds. And it's implied that he forces her to have sex up there, but not forced, because she's in his employ, and it's just a given that he can fuck her if he wants to.
And I think that speaks to the squalid conditions of this place that they're in, which is symbolic of kind of this hellscape.
Yeah.
This is almost like a Dante's Inferno, where you're starting at this top circle of hell, and as the movie progresses, you get deeper and deeper into hell.
Or like a purgatory.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that, because I listened to or watched a quick review from Bill Burr, who I don't usually think of as a film critic, but he was
Burr, the comedian?
Bill Burr, the comedian,
he loves movies.
was giving this a review, and his interpretation was, I'm sorry, not this, but Sorcerer, was that they were in purgatory.
Yeah.
And that they were trying to escape and or go over the sins of their past during, like, atone for the sins of their past. And this journey with the nitroglycerin is like a journey of redemption.
Yep. And both movies make clear that it's nearly impossible to leave, because the work that is available does not pay enough for you to be able to get out.
Right.
And you have these men who are in these desperate circumstances, so that's the only thing that would drive them to make such a suicidal choice.
Right, exactly.
Because this hell that they're in, and it's... And a lot of the symbolism of both films talks about destiny and fate, and it doesn't matter what you do to try to escape your fate, you're going to get yours in the end.
Yep. Well, I think one thing, too, that differs with Sorcerer is that in Wages of Fear, the implication that we see is that the work is, even with the oil company, like, the oil company doesn't always need them. And so a lot of times they're just lazing about. That's why they get called tramps.
They never need them unless the job is considered too dangerous for their unionized employees. That's one of the things they talk about. Mm-hmm. The guy the foreman, the oil company foreman, that is an acquaintance of
Bill O'Brien, right?
The other Frenchman, not Mario, but Joe. Joe knows the foreman from he says they operated together before. Which I assume is some sort of grifting thing, but he sees them as expendable.
Yes.
Yep.
And one of the things that Sorcerer does a much better job of is spending a lot of time on character development and setup.
Yes.
We know in Wages of Fear that these men are criminals or some degree connected to criminal activity, but we don't really see to what extent. Whereas
it's interesting.
I don't think so. I think that in Sorcerer we know they're criminals, but in Wages of Fear, that one of them's a cement worker, one of them, and all of them claim to be truck drivers, obviously, but I think that they're much more explicitly bad men in Sorcerer than they are.
I guess the only one that's overt, I guess, in Wages of Fear is the one that pays his way in, which is Passport.
Yep. And there's it's interesting that you talk about the character stuff with Sorcerer, because we do know more about the characters and see more of their background, but I think you could argue that Wages of Fear gets more depth into the psychology.
I agree with you.
I agree
with you there, because the interplay between the characters does a lot more, not only to explain their personalities and their interactions with one another, but it also gives us, the audience, more of a connection to them because of the action
and their situation. This movie, the majority of the action takes place in the cab of a truck. Yeah, and so you need that internalization.
I agree with that. I did enjoy the Sorcerer's background story, because
and that was a different take.
It totally was, and timely too, because the Arab attacking in Israel, very 1977 kind of thing,
right? But also has implications to things that are still going on. Interesting, we not interesting, but funny. We bring up the terrorist, the bombing, because in the movie where they had to blow up the big tree that was in the middle of the road, they found that they didn't have enough pyrotechnic explosives on set. So William Friedkin called in a buddy of his who just went by a nickname. I can't remember the nickname, from back in the day, who was an arsonist, a paid arsonist, who would do jobs for people who wanted to collect insurance money. And so he flew down to wherever they were. It wasn't Costa Rica, somewhere in South or Central America, right? With a suitcase full of what he called makeup products or beauty products. And it was enough explosives to take care of the job.
Wow.
Huh? That's a consulting.
Yes.
He's a consultant.
Wow.
That sounds like totally like something Friedkin would do. Man, the effects though in Sorcerer, like the bridge scene. Apparently, if you listen to his, he did a really long interview about the movie with the Danish director Nicholas Ren, who did Drive and Bronze and some of those movies. And he, of course, he was sort of dismissive of. He was like, "Well, if I'd had CGI, I would have used it, but we didn't have it, so I wanted to make it look realistic."
Kids, everything in this movie is practical effects because CGI wasn't invented yet.
And there's this harrowing bridge scene where this giant. The trucks are going across this little shanty-ass bridge, turning sideways, and I'm like,
looking like they're about to tip over.
They had to actually attach the the trucks to the bridge for those scenes, and there was hydraulics underneath the bridge, making it go all wonky and like that. And in fact, he had scouted that river because it looked like a formidable river, but by the time they were ready to shoot, it was dried up. So he had to actually pump thousands of gallons of water through here to make it look like a rushing river.
Yeah, that was probably a couple $1 million.
Well, it was supposed to only be a certain amount, but the whole scene is only 12 minutes.
Right.
But it took them 3-4 months to shoot.
Wow. It's grueling, and it is, I would say, the iconic scene in Sorcerer. It's not in the other one, in Wages of Fear. And the thing that I love about that particular scene, the first truck, spoilers, makes it across pretty much okay. It still was kind of white knuckle, but the second truck, the truck named Sorcerer, which is red with an old grill that's painted white, so you almost have this monstrous face looking at you, and you have one of the not the driver but his co-pilot or whatever you want to call him. He's down on the bridge. Talking him through it, move it this way, move it that way. So it almost it looks like you have this hell beast staring down this man on this bridge, and it's very cool to look at. The composition of it's gorgeous, and of course he ends up like dropping through one of the slats, and you're wondering is he going to survive or what?
And
And that shot you're talking about is what they end up using for the poster.
Yes.
In most cases. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then in Wages of Fear, they did 2 still white knucklers, but subtle scenes that ended up making one. So they had the one scene with their version of kind of, I don't know if you called it a bridge or what, though, where they had a tough angle to turn.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to back up.
So they were widening the road there.
Yeah.
And in order to make it easier to make this, 45-degree angle turn in the mountains. And so they had all this, trellis work.
The scaffolding,
yeah. And it looked really, really shoddy, but that it might hold. And then they go out and check it, and it's fucking rotten in places. He just takes his pocket knife and sticks it in he says it's like a sponge.
And the first team figures it out and they get across safely, similar to Sorcerer. And then the second team, they try to warn them. But then the second team, though, is the one that kind of comes harrowingly close.
This is where Joe starts to really show his true bitch colors. This is where
first we think that he falls off the bridge and he's dead, and then all of a sudden we see him
running up the hill to
He's
hide.
like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
He does a lot of running off to hide. When it's just the two of you out there. There's not really any place to hide. He does a lot of hiding because his nerves are bad. His nerves are shot. Speaking of, can we talk about the characters, the other 2 characters, Mario and Luigi?
Yes.
And they kind of look like you switch the bodies.
Yes.
The Nintendo characters, Mario and Luigi, especially Luigi is a dead-on Mario.
He looks just like him. I think I even wrote that note down in my notes
That can't
app.
be a coincidence.
The
programmers were big, Wages
but
of Fear.
Had that game even come out yet?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying the Nintendo.
Oh,
people.
okay.
Yeah.
They were fans of
Fans
the
of
movie.
It almost seems impossible.
Of the movie Sorcerer.
Yeah.
No, of Wages
Wages
of Fear.
of Fear,
I'm
yeah.
going to do that this whole episode.
The characters are eminently more likable, too, in Wages of Fear, even though flawed. Whereas in Sorcerer, and Friedkin in his the interview I referenced earlier says this to effect that they're almost intentionally unsavory people. In the scene that we just discussed with the bridge, do you remember after the Scheider, his character, after they got their truck safely across that bridge, he's almost giddy telling the guy, they're never going to make it across. We're going to double the money, $20,000 a piece.
Right.
Something like that. So these are the kind of people that we're talking about in this movie, whereas in Wages of Fear, they're, flawed characters, but they're, you like them.
I think Joe, though, in Wages of Fear, Joe was kind of calling that shot of saying, I think that we can have more money if they don't make it. Whereas the main character had a little bit more virtue,
and he was the most unscrupulous of all of them.
Yeah.
He was the most flawed. Then probably Mario, then Luigi, then the
King Koopa,
the Dutchman. What the fuck was his name? Blippo or whatever?
I can't. Yeah.
Bebo. It sounds like somebody's pet name.
Well, and then think too about how when they get put the teams together. Initially, in both movies, there's a fourth driver who's ends up not on the crew. In Wages of Fear, the guy hangs himself, and then in Sorcerer,
no. That's wrong. In Wages of Fear, the kid who hangs himself is just somebody who doesn't get hired and doesn't have any way to get back home. So Mama.
Okay.
The guy who's picked is the older German guy he's the older German guy, and Joe goes and talks him out of it. They're seen leaving the bar together, and then Scheinberg or whatever his name is doesn't show back up, and Joe just happens to show back up when it's time to go.
Yeah. So do you think that it was implied that he killed that guy? Because in Sorcerer, there's no question about it. He cut the throat of the.
When I watched it, I thought that Joe had killed him. That's why I interpreted it.
I don't know. I sort of. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, the Sorcerer.
I guess
they make no question
it isn't
about
explicit either way. With Sorcerer, there's something at the end that leaves us questioning as well, right? I guess we'll get to that when we get to the end if we're gonna.
Sure.
Okay.
Or you can jump to it now if you want. The other thing about Sorcerer that I liked was the introduction of this Venezuelan type dictator that was spray painted on all the walls in the village.
All the posters.
Yeah, it was kind of timely, and it kind of illustrated what kind of circumstance these people were in. They were under the thumb of a ruler who didn't really give a shit
And
about
all those
them.
propaganda posters were that thumbprint, something visible for us.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because in Wages of Fear, and this is something I didn't notice the first time I watched it years back, but the SOC logo of the Southern Oil Company keeps popping up. And if you notice, I don't know if you noticed this, but there are 3 derricks in there that look almost like the cross, the 3 crosses.
Oh, really?
And the SOC keeps popping up. Once I noticed it the first time, I would notice it just kept popping up over and over again. So I guess in Sorcerer, this unnamed leader has sort of got the thumb on everyone, and in Wages of Fear, it's almost like this corporation is the god of the movie almost.
Yeah, I feel like they do a better job of vilifying the oil company in Wages of Fear than they do in Sorcerer.
Yeah.
But even though, oil companies are never going to be the protagonist of the movie, unless you're Landman starring.
Yeah.
It's this new Taylor Sheridan show.
Oh, yeah.
With Billy Bob Thornton, Landman,
Landman.
where the oil company is the hero.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the way that Wages of Fear did theirs was a boulder, whereas in Sorcerer it was a tree.
Yep.
I enjoyed the development of that mechanism that he built to get actually using the
That was the MacGyver thing.
He MacGyvered the shit out of it. Now we say he MacGyvered it. Back then they said he really Rube Goldberg the shit out of that thing.
But literally just rigging up a way to pour nitroglycerin down into this hole that he's created.
Which was pretty lucky, because he just told Luigi, go find me a branch.
Yeah.
And he comes back with this palm that he's able to strip and use as kind of like a funnel to ever so slowly pour nitroglycerin down into this 30-inch hole that Luigi has quote unquote drilled in the boulder just by taking a crowbar and hitting it a lot.
Yeah.
That would have taken days to get that hole in there.
Definitely more
alone.
realistic. And then the terrorist skills of the bomb making or whatever, I think came in handy with the
tree
that scene. So I think their version of it was a little bit more realistic, of course. But yeah, both great scenes though.
So the ending of the film, what were you wanting to say?
In Sorcerer,
Yeah.
he comes back and he's given a check, and he's like, "What good is this to me?" He says, "Well, you're going to go here. You're going to cash it. It'll be cashed in a matter of hours. You'll be good to go. We got you on a flight wherever." And he goes into the little bar and he sees the lady scrubbing the floor. She's called a char girl. He asks her to dance, and while he's dancing outside the
we cut
cafe,
to the exterior,
and it's a nice over bird's eye view, and this car shows up, and it's one of the mob kingpins enforcers.
Yeah,
gets out of the vehicle
from the church.
Yep.
From the beginning, which we didn't really mention.
Yeah.
Roy Scheider's character was part of an Irish mob that tries to rob a church, where they accidentally kill a priest who's connected to this mob kingpin. And that's what Roy Scheider's character is on the run from in the beginning. So they walk into the cafe, and then we're still out. We, the viewer, are still outside, and we hear what could be a gunshot or a tire blowing out. And then we don't find out what the fate. They really soprano us.
I think
on
that
this
it's
final scene.
I don't know. I felt like it was, because think about when Tangerine Dream's ominous music kicks in. When they show the second guy, they show the enforcer. The second guy they show is the guy who helped him get over there.
Yeah.
So he clearly got told on or whatever and got paid off. And then they go and I think that...
but it is still left ambiguous because we don't see it.
Yeah, we don't see it. If you think about it, though, it seems like we're going to get this nice send-off.
Get away.
He's dancing. They're playing some nice music. Both movies deal with fate. And in this case, you're thinking, okay, he's gotten through this. Fate had it in
fate
for him.
over and over.
But think about what ended up killing him. He said, "Can you give me a couple of minutes?"
Yeah.
If he had left when they were ready to leave,
Good point.
he would have escaped them.
Yeah.
In Wages of Fear, and I know you didn't like the ending, and I get it.
For you, they'll hold the plane. In the ending of Wages of Fear is similar but different.
Yeah, he's giddily snake, just swerving all the way down the mountain.
Yeah, but I think
And giddy,
I think I can buy it though, because he thinks that fate was on his side, that he's bulletproof, that he's made it, that I got through all this.
He's the chosen one.
Yeah.
He's driving that truck back on the roads that were just so impassable, like a little kid pretending to drive.
Yeah.
Like Maggie in the car with Marge,
and that's the part that bothered me, because he knows how dangerous this was.
And
but fate's on his side now. He's bulletproof.
I think he would be extra careful.
Yeah, I think he's just
not
being a little too foolhardy.
He's also superstitious, because remember his little lottery ticket or whatever that thing was?
It was a Metro ticket.
Metro, that he was holding in his hand. And he's holding his hand at the end of the movie. That's the last shot.
Yeah, he just happened to be holding that.
Which is that fate...
that was his symbolic hope that he was going to get out of there. And, but he also said earlier to Joe, he tried to give it to him for good luck.
Right.
And he says, it doesn't matter, it's expired anyway.
Yeah.
So his ticket out was expired.
Yeah.
Which speaks to the whole symbolism of the deal of that they're in hell.
Yep.
They're in purgatory. There's no getting out. No matter what kind of gauntlet they run through, there is no getting out for these guys.
Yep. So if you're looking at it as the symbolism initially is like, they're having to do their penance.
Yeah.
But then it's like, nope.
Which is what I really liked about Friedkin's closing on Sorcerer, is when they pull out of that high aerial shot. We are spectators looking in on this. We're not a part of it at this point.
Yeah.
And we get to see them in their little fishbowl.
Is it fair to even assess which one we think is better?
There are elements I like about both of them.
Yeah.
That kind of puts them neck and neck for me. I think Friedkin ratchets up the suspense with that bridge scene.
Yeah.
And for me, that is just the reason to watch it, to just see that. The spectacle alone is worth it. But Wages of Fear, the character interplay is what makes that movie
and it's
rewarding.
A little tighter. I mean, I can see why audiences just outside of the Star Wars thing would have had a hard time, because the beginning of the movie, first off, it's a long prologue setting things up.
30 minutes.
And a lot of it is not in English.
Yeah.
So you're having to read subtitles for a lot of it, and it takes a while to get into the meat of it. And so, but on the other hand, though, I can see why people like Tarantino would prefer that approach.
Well, it kind of speaks to Friedkin and his attitude as an artist. He will do something just for him.
Yep.
And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, Fried. I like to make references that only I will get also. Like naming the movie Sorcerer when it's the name that he sees painted on a Jeep when he's scouting in South America.
Yeah, that's a weird name for the movie.
And 9 times out of 10, if you mention this movie to somebody, they're immediately going to think it's a sword and sorcery movie.
Sure.
Go back and listen to our sword and sorcery episode with Dave.
Bartender Dave. Speaking of Friedkin, at the beginning of The Exorcist, what's one of the opening shots? It's the big stone demon.
Okay, yeah.
Right? In the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
In Sorcerer, there is a close-up of like a carved demon head on a wall that reminded me of The Exorcist, and I was like, "Oh, yep, there we go."
What
Friedkin.
is the? I guess it could be obvious the significance of the watch that his wife gives him. In Sorcerer, his wife gives him a watch that he takes with him. It's kind of like the other guy's ticket. It's
it's his little talisman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
because he loved his wife. I mean, they established that he's loves his wife.
Yeah, he
very
tries
much
to sell it, and wasn't there a watch in the Wages of Fear as well? Though,
I don't think so.
He filed off the message on the back.
Oh, can't remember that. I think
it very well could, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, because because in Sorcerer, he tries to use the watch. That's his only valuable possession left to buy his way out. And then they say, well, you need this plus 1,000 pesos. That's why he has to go on the trip. They get over the bridge, though. It's right after they get over the bridge, which you would have thought, okay, they're safe now. Nope. Tire blows out randomly.
Yeah.
So this isn't something that, this is something completely out of their control.
I literally blinked and missed it when the tire blew out. Like something distracted me.
Yep.
I heard it and I looked and I was like, I had to rewind it and watch it again.
Yeah.
It happened so out of the blue.
Yep. And he says
unexpectedly.
it's 5 minutes before 9 in Paris. Boom.
Well, it turns out that his father hid that watch in his butt during the Korean War.
Yep. And then, of course, we see the explosion where that car gets, that truck gets killed in Sorcerer, whereas in Wages of Fear, Joe is fixing his cigarette.
Oh, it's
and
off
then
in the distance.
Yeah, and then the tobacco blows away. And then it blows. At first, I thought when the tobacco blew away, I was like, did the tobacco make the truck blow up? But then I was like, no, it's just... Yeah.
I thought, well, that's a weird time for the wind to kick up. Then I was like, oh, it's the fucking shock from the explosion.
Yep.
Nitroglycerin's a high explosive, so it's going to send out
Yep.
a shockwave in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about that at the beginning when they're talking about how to put out this oil fire. He says you put the explosives surrounding it and then set them all off at once like the swinging of an axe.
Yep.
Another question. This is random, but in the foreman's office in Wages of Fear, there's this thing that looks like a pillar covered in like circular objects. I don't know if it's supposed to be architectural or if it's functional or what. Every time they showed the interior of that office, which is like maybe 3 times, I was like, what the fuck is that thing? Is it some sort of communication device? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that at all.
I didn't catch it, no.
I'll leave it to Travis.
So one thing that I saw come up a few times that I didn't really pick up on, and I'm curious about this. In Wages of Fear, there's supposedly a strong homoerotic bent established between Joe and Mario. And that's multiple critics that I saw or analysis I saw brought that element up. And that's why he's like just kind of dismissive of the waitress.
It could be in as much that there's not very many women around and it's pretty much all men there. Yeah. But there is that one scene where it's her one night off of the month and he's supposed to take her out.
Yeah.
And
tells her to get lost.
But that's
and Joe gets butthurt about it.
But no, Joe gets butthurt at the idea of him even not just going with him to party.
Yeah.
And they don't even actually say what it is they're going to do other than just drink and hang out.
Yep.
But he chooses to go with the woman and then gets frustrated with her for all of her nagging. Yeah, he really does treat this lady horribly. She was really pretty too.
Yeah, she seemed like a sweet person, and boy, does she really get the short end.
Throws her in the mud when she's hanging off the truck as he's leaving the village.
Yep. I just thought that was interesting because that was the way one particular critic talked about it. Almost sounded like it was just an obvious thing. I was like, I didn't really pick up. I mean, it was subtle. I mean, I could see it, but.
Here's another thing that Sorcerer did, and I think it speaks to the fact that it came out in 1977, and they could be a little bit more explicit with this. When the truck comes back from the oil field and it has all the dead bodies and the injured that they're offloading off the truck.
Burn guy?
Oh, it's graphic, yes, but it's a preamble to just how dangerous all of this work is in this hellscape.
Well, and they established, too, how dangerous the nitroglycerin is really well, where they show the one guy who all he does is put his hand in front of it and get a little bit of it on his hand, and then he very slowly walks outside and tosses his hand, and it causes a little minor disturbance, but, like, that's like, holy shit. Like, just doing that,
They do something similar in Wages of Fear, I think. There's like just a drop.
Yeah, something, but I don't know.
Sorcerer did a better job of that. But
and they show the boxes around the sand, and
that's interesting. You bring that up because in Wages of Fear, the trucks were packed with these gas canisters,
jerry cans,
like a lot. Whereas in Sorcerer, each truck had maybe 3 wooden crates packed around in sand. So why did they have so much in Wages of Fear? Did they need that much?
Well, they said they had 10 times more than they needed, or they only had 200 gallons of nitroglycerin left on the base or whatever. And the foreman says, well, that's probably 10 times more than we need. But they loaded up a lot of it. I bet they loaded, 50 between the 2 trucks, 50 jerry cans.
Oh, and I did love at the end of Sorcerer when Scheider is actually carrying the crate into the oil place, and he's about to fall out.
Yeah.
And it's just like trying to be so careful.
It probably would have gone off.
It probably would have gone off. I was kind of thinking for a second that maybe he would fall over and just blow the fuck out of everybody surrounding him.
That landscape was really interesting there at the end. It added to the hallucinatory quality of those scenes.
Yeah, that's when the titles sort of
mounds of sandstone that had been very eroded by wind. There was like columns, and it reminded me of like a Monument Valley, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah. And I think you bring that up. The landscapes are distinctly different between the two films. Wages of Fear being more rocky, barren landscape, and Sorcerer being more jungle, humid.
Because in Wages of Fear, it's like they're
last scene when they get to the oil field.
Right.
Yeah, it seems in Wages of Fear almost like they're going around a mountain or something, and then like you said, it's a jungle basically that they're going through for most of Sorcerer, up until the end, I guess.
They finally make it to the payday, and they're like, "Well, was it scary?" There you go, Wages of Fear.
But the wages of sin is death. What are the wages of fear? That was the question that one critic asked about.
So, Sorcerer is the name of one of the trucks. What's the other one?
I don't know. Do you?
I can't remember.
Oh,
what was it?
Lazarus.
Lazarus,
right.
From the dead.
And it was interesting too to me that the English language movie, mostly Sorcerer, they put peligro on the side of the truck, Spanish for danger, and in the movie that's all in French, they put explosives in English. Got to figure out who your audience is going to be.
Your audience.
Well, I guess the Southern Oil Company was American, right?
I guess, yeah.
I think that because they kept talking about the Americans.
American Oil Company.
Yeah.
But no, in Sorcerer, it's called the American Oil Company.
Yeah.
The
that's a good
AOC.
point. I don't know. You're right. You would think that they would just...
They say, in one of them, they say, wherever there's oil, there's going to be Americans.
Yep.
Yeah.
That scene where they... the first truck blows up in the first movie. The first truck blows up ahead of them and leaves that crater, but also severs the oil pipeline. So there's just gallons and gallons and gallons of oil flooding into this crater, and the truck gets stuck in it.
And he runs over Joe's leg.
He runs over Joe's leg, severing the leg much like the pipeline.
Yep.
And eventually gets the truck out with a trick that Joe reluctantly tells him for a sip of water. That was pretty harsh.
Yeah,
that was pretty mercenary there.
And the where he has to submerge his entire body under there to get the wrench around the axle or in the axle to attach those cables to, and he comes back up like a beast, like a creature from the Black Lagoon.
It's kind of like a reverse, like a reverse baptism.
Yes, and apparently it was real oil.
Yeah, really?
Yes, that's
oil was so cheap.
Yeah.
It was just coming out of the ground.
And Mario was hardcore. He was like, "No, I'm not stopping." Or do you think he just couldn't stop? Or
yeah,
or he was just like, I don't know.
He did know he was driving over his leg. So he even says that. He's like, "You knew you were driving over me."
Pretty gnarly.
So, and I guess we just assume he bleeds out, even though he's got that belt around it.
Yeah,
and that's it for Joe. Joe doesn't make it to the finish line.
Yeah.
So, and only Mario does until he does the stupidest thing. I still think he would have been so cautious on the way back. I would have been. I would be like, holy shit, we have pressed our luck this time. We're not making any. I would be driving like a dude whose wife was in the car judging him.
But if you're superstitious, like he clearly was, he may have been. He convinced himself that he was chosen, that he had, or that fate was on his side.
I get it.
Whatever.
Yeah, I get it. I just didn't really care for it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And I do prefer the ending of Sorcerer as well. What about, so there's a scene at the beginning of the film of Wages of Fear. Do you remember the scene where the kid is torturing cockroaches? He's made some sort of, did y'all pay any attention to that? Okay.
In the very beginning, when they're like going through the town towards the bar.
Yeah, and
I remember the guy
vultures
throwing rocks at the dog.
Yeah, and we keep seeing vultures too. But there's a scene with a kid who's like braided cockroaches or something, and then he leaves it, and then the vultures come and get it or something. Y'all don't remember that?
I don't remember it.
Okay, anyway, it was a very. I just made note of that scene and wondered what y'all thought about it, but I guess it has something to do with the themes, maybe God torturing his
sinners in the hands of an angry God.
I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting scene.
Overall, I liked Wages of Fear better. I thought it was a more enjoyable watch.
I think if I had to go back and watch one of the two, I would probably lean towards Wages of Fear first.
Yep.
It's a tighter film, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and
the circumstances around Sorcerer are what makes it so interesting, I think.
Yep. And the character-driven element of Wages of Fear I prefer. It's a tighter plot. It does take a while for us to get all the backstory and stuff in Sorcerer is interesting, but it also is kind of convoluted in a way.
How many people went to the theater in 1977 thinking, "Man, Star Wars was sold out. I guess I'm going to go watch some magic."
Yeah,
some magic.
Not a
action."
lot, apparently.
And then like walked out.
And there is something to be said about having characters who are likable. I mean, they're all flawed in Wages of Fear, of course, but in Sorcerer, the characters are not terribly likable. I mean, I guess the guy with the watch, Serrano, is about as close as likable as you get. The rest of them are all pretty ruthless characters, and so that does make it a bit, even though you're enjoying yourself watching it, it's a hard one to think, well, let me go revisit that dark shit again,
Yeah.
The next time I'm in a foreign land, I'm just going to whistle our national anthem and see if anybody joins in, so I'll know if there's some Americans around.
All right. Unless anyone else has more to add, I think we've given a good, thorough examination of these two.
We didn't go to the lobby, but if we had, do you know what we should have gotten?
What?
Some Pop Rocks.
Pop Rocks.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Atomic warheads.
Yeah.
Or whatever the candy
that's
is.
good.
Yeah.
That's good, yes.
Oh, well. Next time. All right. Well, we've got some time. Does anybody have any movies that they've watched or anything that they want to talk about that they want to share? How's everybody doing on their Cinema Chop Shop movie challenge?
Not well. I'm not even doing well on my regular movie challenge.
I passed the halfway point today.
Oh, good job.
I have a couple I need to log, but I saw my pick for the Italian poliziottesque genre was absolutely an amazing movie. Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion.
Okay.
And the director is Elio Petri. It came out in 1970, but it's got the classics of that genre, which is the police are corrupt, the government's corrupt, and so you're seeing all that, and it's from the corrupt, the perspective of the corruption. But it has a very Kafkaesque element, and what I'm about to say is not a spoiler. I'm giving nothing away. The head detective of this place in Italy, although they actually never say where they are, murders a woman, but instead of trying to hide what he's doing, he immediately starts setting about doing things to intentionally leave clues that it was him. And you're like, what is going on here? And as the film progresses, he's essentially, any conversation he has with someone, he's essentially giving them more clues, like, I'm the one that did this, I'm the one that did this.
He wants to be caught.
He wants to be caught, and then you're like, why does he want to be caught?
Yeah.
And then it's a very Kafkaesque thing, like about the power of the state.
It's like that Christopher Lloyd role I told you about in the really bad second National Lampoon's movie, National Lampoon's Goes to the Movies.
Yeah.
The only good part is Christopher Lloyd plays the serial killer who literally leaves a calling card on the bodies.
Right. Yeah, but I highly recommend that movie.
Well, these aren't related to the Cinema Chop Shop movie contest thing. But some movies I saw recently. I watched The Monkey. It has no business being as good as it is. I was very apprehensive because it's directed by Oz Perkins, who we were all disappointed in with Long Legs.
I like Long Legs.
Oh, no.
I know a lot of people that didn't like Monkey.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
I think it's all right. And I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
So that's a decent rating. Hard Eyes, I finally watched hard eyes. That was fun.
It's like a Hallmark horror
Exactly.
movie.
Hallmark and or Lifetime had a baby with a traditional slasher.
Yeah.
And then Novocaine was fun.
I haven't watched it yet.
Jack Quaid, Novocaine. That's that was a lot of fun. Boy, oh boy, the whole joy of the movie is how much shit does he go through.
Okay.
You know.
Nice. I watched the most recent movie I've watched was for the challenge, and it was your category, Travis. The
sweet.
MacGuffin technique.
Yeah.
And this film was called The Narrow Margin.
Okay.
It takes place on a train, and this detective is charged with escorting this mob informant. She's a widow, and her mob husband has gotten killed, and she has the list of names. That's the MacGuffin. And
Mine is going to be Ronin with De Niro.
Yeah, Ronin's
But if
good.
you think about it, isn't the challenge itself a MacGuffin?
Yes, it is. This one's fun, though, because it has a lot of twists and turns, a lot of people on the train who are either for or against the cause, but you don't discover it until the movie progresses. And it makes really good use of narrow passageways and narrow rooms. And the copy I have has a William Friedkin commentary track.
Cool.
Oh, nice. Oh, Death of a Unicorn was good.
Was it?
With
I
Paul
wanna see
Rudd?
it.
Yeah, Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega.
Ortega.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not perfect. If you read some of the reviews, it's kind of mixed. But I like the hell out of it. It's got like a splatter horror movie aesthetic
Good.
to it.
Bring your kids.
Yeah, I took Vivian to see it. She's
Nice.
12 though, so
Nice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
The trailer for Naked Gun dropped.
Yeah, so funny.
They're
It's
doing
only
a-
1 minute long.
They're doing a
Liam
Naked Gun
Neeson-
remake?
Yes.
Liam Neeson is the new version.
Liam
He's Frank
Neeson.
Drebin's
Liam Neeson.
son.
Don't spoil that. Just watch the trailer. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's fun.
They even make an OJ joke in there. It's
Yes.
good.
Okay.
But we're not in favor of remakes or reboots or any of that stuff. But if you're going to do one, you may as well do Naked Gun.
Yes.
We'll start wrapping things up. Thank you for listening to the episode. Next episode, we're going to do a Rest in Peace, Val Kilmer, Sweet 16, which is Joey's favorite type of episode. I will get the list out to everybody post-haste so we can start prepping for the episode in a couple
There's
of
some
weeks.
good ones. And there's going to be some nostalgia picks, too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I've got nostalgia picks. I think I'm going with the heavy hitters first and foremost, and then we'll see what other
Speaking
nuggets.
of Val Kilmer, that's going to be a category, not a Patrick Swayze category, but a Val Kilmer category at trivia this week. Right answers with wrong, Travis.
Yes. Very good at Seminar Brewing.
That's right.
For those of us in Florence, South Carolina. I would like to plug Zyrtec. Send us that money, Zyrtec. And thank you for enduring my seasonal allergies through this episode. We're Cinema Chop Shop on all the social medias. We're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast on YouTube as well as Blue Sky. Blue Sky. And
Goodbye, blues. Sorry.
it's okay.
Oh, I automatically went to Hey There, Mr. Blue, ELO, right?
Yeah.
That's also because it's my alarm sound.
Love your neighbor, love yourself, tell your friends and family you love them.
Yep.
Do kind things for total strangers that will make you feel good. It makes them feel good too. And please don't forget to watch, shop, retrofit.